Hi everyone, this is Jed Schlackman, and I'm a holistic counselor and spiritual energy healer. In this video, I'd like to talk about the emotional and mind-body elements of respiratory illness. So, of course, respiratory illnesses often involve the lungs, the bronchial tubes. It also includes the nasal passages, so all the areas where that air is flowing into your body, coming down toward your lungs, where the oxygen exchange process occurs, where you're taking in what you need to receive from the air you breathe, and then you're exhaling the waste products from that process that's occurring there in your lungs. Right now we're going through this, you could say, planet-wide concern or issue with coronavirus. And coronaviruses are actually a family of viruses that are usually associated with the common cold or other respiratory symptoms. There are other types of viruses that can also create or be a part of respiratory illness symptoms, and bacteria can also play a significant role in respiratory illnesses. So there isn't just a one-to-one correlation between a specific virus or bacteria and the symptoms that appear. So a variety of different microbes could be present, helping produce the same pattern of symptoms. And also in different people, any given type of microbe might produce different symptoms or even no symptoms at all. It's brought to our awareness that with something like the coronavirus, there are many people who are exposed to it, and yet it's just a small percentage of those who show they've been exposed who are actually exhibiting visible signs of illness. So a minor percentage are showing some signs of illness, and then out of those, a percentage of that part of the population are showing more severe symptoms. And so we could see that just the fact that you're exposed to a particular microbe doesn't determine what your experience will be. It doesn't determine necessarily that you're going to get ill, or that if you do show symptoms that it would become a more severe, complex illness. So we can understand that there's different layers of reality, really. There are different levels or dimensions to who we are as a human being. We have, of course, our physical body, our biochemistry, our physiology, but then beyond that, there are other layers of energy. There's subtle energy bodies, in a sense. So you could find electrical and magnetic energies, and beyond that there's emotional and mental energies and spiritual energies. And it's kind of like different layers to this shell of energy that surrounds the physical body. People often refer to that as the aura or the biofield. Bio meaning life. So the field of life energy that's really giving life to the physical body. If that field of energy wasn't there, if our body wasn't being infused with energy, then all the cells in the body would quickly die off and begin to break down. So that field of life energy is essential to our existence as living beings. And what's happening in those different layers of that field of life energy affects the flow of energy coming into the physical body, the energy field and current that's present with each organ, with each tissue, with each cell of the body. And depending on what patterns are present in our consciousness, different disturbances or distortions can occur, which could affect different organs, different tissues, different systems of the body. So in the present discussion, we'll be focusing on the respiratory system, especially on the lungs, the vital organ for our respiratory system. We can look at Chinese medicine or Oriental medicine, where they often speak about grief being the emotion that resonates with or is carried by the lungs. So when you're having some type of illness with the lungs, it's not unusual for there to be some unresolved grief. Another common pattern with the lungs is feeling some type of pressure or suffocation where you're not able to fully breathe or to let your lungs fully expand. So there's some type of constriction there, and often you're feeling that on the emotional level, where perhaps you're not able to process your emotions. You're kind of holding your emotions in. You could be holding in sadness or grief. You could be in an environment where people don't allow you to feel, to express yourself, or share your emotions. You kind of have to hold your emotions in. People may have told you it's not appropriate to cry. They may have in some way insulted you or in some way teased you about crying. You may have been given that message or impression at a young age that it's not a sign of well-being or health if you're crying. People might have told you you're weak. So at some point you may have learned to hold in your emotions, and in that sense you're kind of suffocating that energy or keeping it trapped. So that can eventually have some physical effect upon the lungs, upon the respiratory system, and combined with other biological stressors, it could lead to some type of illness. So if you're exposed to various environmental toxins, or toxins are building up in your body, or if you're malnourished in some way, you're not getting some vital nutrients, if you're not getting enough rest or sleep, if you're not getting outside to breathe fresh air, not getting enough oxygen, all that could put some stress on the respiratory system, and especially when that's combined with those emotional disturbances where energy is not flowing well on the emotional level, it could quite likely lead to some type of illness or disease. I'm going to read a little bit now from a book called Metaphysical Anatomy, which is by Yvette Rose. And this is a book that speaks a lot or teaches a lot about the mind-body correlations, the metaphysical roots of different illnesses or conditions that we might be manifesting. And here I'm going to go into pneumonia and the different patterns that could potentially be present that this author sees as likely reasons that someone might start to manifest this type of illness. She says here, with the emotions, you feel overwhelmed by old grief, disappointment, or a feeling that you are being suffocated by your emotions. In other cases, you might be in an environment where people's emotions are running high. You are very sensitive to people's behavior and reactions toward you. people and circumstances triggered your suppressed issues during a time when you felt exhausted by your own challenges. You feel helpless and powerless to change challenging circumstances. This is especially true if the client is a child. Nevertheless, even as an adult, you may find similar situations that leave you feeling powerless to change what's going on around you. You feel overburdened by what you cannot change and desperately need a break from an upsetting and controlling situation. You may have been exposed to a change or drop in temperature in the environment while simultaneously feeling upset, stressed, or helpless. This caused a buildup of tension or anxiety and highlighted your inability to cope. You feel choked or suffocated by what is going on, both inside and outside the body. You may feel invaded, controlled, or trapped by outside influences. Your boundaries felt disrespected several times, leaving you defenseless, unable to protect yourself either physically or emotionally. Now, as I go through these, remember these are all different potential correlations that might exist. It's not that one person has all of these particular situations or factors present. Next, it says, if the client is a child, explore what they have had enough of in their circumstances. The client often feels held back, controlled, or trapped. The child often expresses their parents' unexpressed trauma. What issues have they been struggling with in their life, and what is their relationship like with their parents? It is also important to explore what the client's mother and father's relationship is like with one another. Their marital problems might have a big impact on the client. The child might also be very sensitive to their parents' mood in the house. This person might take on too much stress from their parents with the intention of helping them deal with their stress. They might feel overly responsible for certain circumstances in their life and environment. Explore all the above mentioned during the womb stages as well. Did your mother experience any of the mentioned emotions while you were developing in her womb? Her immune system might have been compromised due to high levels of stress. Her stress may have been related to fear of the future, a bad diet, illness, or relationship problems. Your mother may also have been a first-time mother. She may have smothered you with too much attention, either physically or emotionally. This may have resulted in your feeling overwhelmed when she is there and anxious when she's absent. So those are some things to consider, some emotional circumstances or patterns that could affect a person and lead toward vulnerability toward or manifestation of pneumonia or other sorts of respiratory illnesses where the lungs are affected. So we can look at causality of illnesses from different dimensions or directions in a sense. In the modern medical system, they start out looking at things from a purely physiological or biochemical level. So that's where they're focused on microbes, on bacteria and viruses, on microorganisms that are present in the body when a particular illness is exhibited. However, we could also look from those other energy body layers, and if we look at it more from that level, we might see that a person is going through some type of stress or trauma, some major emotional upset or pressure, and that actually occurs sometime preceding where the physiological signs of illness start to unfold. So you might first have this emotional stress or trauma, and that creates this disturbance in your energy field, which weakens the flow of energy into your body into your lungs or respiratory system. So you might feel pressured, you might not be breathing as fully or deeply as you would when you're more relaxed and more in harmony. So now the oxygen levels are decreased, other nutrients, other vitamins or minerals are not as abundant in your body. So different markers are changing or shifting at the biochemical level. And so now your immune system is not able to maintain as solid or strong a response to environmental threats. So if you do happen to be in an environment where you're exposed to some type of virus or bacteria, then your body in some sense allows that particular microbe to become more active than it otherwise would. And so as it becomes more active, a series of things occur in your body where at some point your immune system starts to kind of hyperreact, realizing there's a major threat now, that if it doesn't do something, then major repercussions could occur. So now you might start to develop a fever, you might have inflammation, you might have a buildup of mucus. So all of those things are the symptoms of your now elevated immune system response, where your immune system recognizes there's a significant danger if that microbe continues to multiply and spread. So now it's going into this hypervigilant type of mode where it's acting more aggressively to try to stop that microbe from progressing further. So at this point, it's important for you to get rest and do other things that help your immune system provide a really more healthy response to complete resolution of whatever's been occurring. So you might want to get extra antioxidants. You might need to be consuming a very light diet or juicing so that your body has more energy to focus on this immune response. So whatever you can do to support and assist that process might be vital and valuable. Now, since I've mentioned all these factors that contribute to the development of the illness and to what can support your immune response and bringing about a healing or resolution, I think it might be helpful to take a moment to consider what's actually occurring in our society right now, since there is this kind of quickly spreading extra virulent type of respiratory virus that has been all over the world now, and it's affecting some countries and regions more than others. And people might think that's purely based on the transmission occurring on a biological level, but there could be other psychological or emotional factors present, where in different regions or countries, people have more commonly certain emotional patterns that could lead to the manifestation of a particular type of illness. Here in the United States, we've had a lot of pressure over political matters that have been going on over the last few years, a lot of conflict and dissent between different factions in a sense. So people have been riled up about things of that nature, and there have been, of course, various other issues present that put pressure on people. So in certain areas or countries, that might be a factor. Now, the actual response to the perceived threat to the pandemic issue in itself creates repercussions. So imagine if you're traumatizing people by creating this sudden shift or change in the circumstances of their life, you're causing a lot of people to be out of work, to be confined in their homes. With this all going on, you're actually creating, for many people, some feeling of great pressure, some grief, some suffocation, the very types of emotional factors that actually increase susceptibility to this particular type of illness. So you're creating the risk of a prolonged stress occurring for people who might have initially at the outset not been going through these types of stresses. They might have been in a energetically more balanced and healthy state. But now, since you've created or triggered these stresses for them, depending on how long they have to go through this period of stress or trauma, you could say, you're creating now more susceptibility to people developing illnesses related to those emotional factors. So while you may think you're doing something to prevent the transmission at a biochemical level of these particular illnesses, it's possible that you're actually overreacting and over-responding in such a manner that you'll create more future illness. You'll create the conditions, in a sense, for even more people to develop this condition later on, when they may be exposed to either this same microbe or other microbes in the future. So it could create a very strong future wave of the illness, a wave that, in a sense, is a result of all the different stresses and emotional traumas that people have been going through from the initial epidemic and the response to it. Of course, when you have a lot of people ill and a lot of people dying, that creates a lot of emotional stress and grief for the people around them. There are often families where one person gets sick or one person dies, and then you notice just after that other family members start to succumb to illnesses. So part of it could have to do with the physical transmission of microorganisms, but there's also likely a significant emotional component where those emotional factors are leading people to become more vulnerable to developing these illnesses. So to understand how epidemics unfold, it helps to be able to observe both the physical level as well as the emotional, mental, and spiritual levels. And we want to address healing on all of these levels. So anything that you can do to receive emotional support to help you express and process your emotions or release them in some manner. It could be unique to each person how they need to process things. For some people, it needs to be released more physically, actually moving energy through their body, through breath, through exercise, through some type of physical touch or massage. So there's different ways we can discharge and release stuck energy from our body, as well as from our energy body, from our light body. So those emotional patterns and energies can get stuck. If they're stuck, they'll likely start to at some point have a physical effect, since our body in a way is subconsciously trying to help us release and resolve what hasn't been released and resolved on a mental or emotional level. So on some level, everything is seeking to resolve itself, and if we don't facilitate the resolution on one level, things will start to come down to another level to seek that resolution. I hope that this discussion has given each of you some greater insight into these somewhat complex issues, into the holistic nature of health and illness, and how we can take steps both on a preventive level and on a healing level or treatment level to address these different factors. For our physical health and well-being, it is important to help yourself and others you might be assisting have access to healthy nutrition, to an adequate environment that supports one's rest and emotional balance. So if we're kind of stuck inside and feeling pressured or having conflict with other people around us, certainly that adds to our stress rather than resolving it. So let's do our best to support all the people around us to have resources to support their healing rather than providing additional stresses that could further aggravate any illness or potential for illness that someone might be experiencing. I invite each of you to watch more of my YouTube videos on holistic health and wellness. And for those that have a web browser, which is probably just about all of you who are watching a video, you can check out my website, which is phinsights.com, phinsights.com. For now, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.